Hello, I'm David Gauntlett from the University of Westminster, and for this video I'm going to be running very quickly through the key themes of my inaugural lecture entitled Participation Culture, Creativity and Social Change, which was presented for the first time on the 12th of November 2008. I'm going to be connecting up a number of different strands that you see illustrated here, and argue that through the process of making things and sharing them in the world, whether online or in real life, we come to feel more engaged with the world, more connected with it, and looking to the future, I will argue that this culture and process of making may contain one of the keys that we will need as we creatively tackle the challenge of climate change and other environmental problems. This diagram shows how it all pans out, a critique of the old leading towards some hope for the new. Now, everybody's heard about Web 2.0. The thing about Web 2.0, of course, is that rather than being a set of separate private gardens, which most people simply look at, it's more like a communal allotment which different users can come to, tend and add to. That's precisely what Tim Berners-Lee had in mind when he invented the web 18 years ago, that all users would be not simply readers but writers of content on the web. Sites like Wikipedia, Flickr and YouTube, massively popular sites, would be nothing without the material put there by their users. That's the whole point. And as you know, there's a fascinating diverse range of stuff available on such sites, on everything from knitting to fatherhood to architecture. This idea of people making and sharing online, is this really something that happens in the real world? Well, a survey published in New Scientist magazine, March 2008, found some statistics such as these ones. The most notable being this, that 32% of US adults and teens agreed with the statement, "I am a broadcaster of my own media material." Quite a striking statistic, that. I should acknowledge some of the previous work that's been done on Web 2.0. Here are some of the key books. Charles Ledbetter, in his book We Think, quotes Woody Guthrie's copyright message that the singer-songwriter put into his printed songbooks in the 1930s. It says you can do what you like with the material. Publish it, write it, sing it, swing to it, yodel it. We wrote it. That's all we wanted to do. That's an early example of the idea that you make stuff and put it out there and other people can do what they like with it. So that was about Web 2.0. Now if we think about traditional media and audience studies, what I'm calling the problem with audience studies here, I got into audience studies because I was interested in people and I was interested in popular culture. People and popular culture, that equals audience studies. I tended not to appreciate critics such as Theodore Adorno and Neil Postman because they seemed to be saying that people spent an awful lot of time watching garbage on TV. They seemed to be saying that people were morons and that the stuff on TV was completely rubbish. How unfair! I saw that kind of thing as a kind of high culture attack on popular culture and was insulting to people. So we defended people, showing how they're often critical and discriminating viewers. But what were we actually doing? It's not much of an argument for a whole kind of discipline to be making. People are not morons, but I kind of knew that already. So the thing is, there's nothing really wrong with the content, but primarily due to television, we've learnt to be audience for large chunks of each day, which is unlike at any other point in human history. We've learned to be audience, and at the same time, surely not coincidentally, we've sat around whilst unprecedented destruction of our natural world has taken place. As well as learning to be passive audiences, we teach our kids to be passive learners. Guy Claxton's excellent book suggests that our formal education system tends to crush curiosity and questioning in the drive to train students to do well in particular exams. More positively, he suggests the idea of learning muscles that you can see here, which are qualities of mind, a kind of spirit of inquiry, and in particular knowing that you can make mistakes and not be knocked back by those because you know that you can learn from mistakes, something that our education system doesn't really encourage. School today is often about learning lists of stuff, copying down and preparing for tests. That's not going to foster creative, inquisitive learners for the 21st century. Again, it leads to a kind of passive paralysis as the state of the world gets dramatically worse. The threat of climate change is now widely accepted and acknowledged. For example, the UK government commissioned the Stern Review of Climate Change, which argued that the cost of doing nothing about climate change would be 5 to 20% of global GDP every year, now and forever, whereas the cost of avoiding this would be just 1% of global GDP. Stern includes this chart showing what would happen with a 2, 3, 4 or 5 increase in average global temperatures. Beyond 2 degrees, which we're highly likely to reach, all kinds of terrible things start to happen. Falling crop yields, the most vulnerable people suffering earliest and most, up to 4.4 billion people facing water shortages, 20 to 50% of species facing extinction, extreme weather, storms, fires, droughts, flooding, and the irreversible melting of the Greenland ice sheet which would commit us to an eventual 7 metre sea level rise. Amazing stuff, which will happen if we don't implement some quite radical lifestyle changes. These are big challenges. Limits need to be set on people's behaviour. Governments aren't going to do that unless they think that there's a demand for it. We need creative ways to get people concerned, and we need creative solutions to the problems. So what can we possibly do? This seems like a terrible nightmare. We probably need to reduce carbon emissions by 90% by 2030 if we're going to avoid some of these really awful things. So how are we going to fix this, and how is a media studies guy going to be able to suggest anything? Well, of course, I don't have the one big solution. There may not be one big solution. There may need to be lots of different things happening in different spheres, but pulling us in the right direction. What I want to do is point towards a shift that needs to be made, which is one of the things that needs to happen. It's the shift from a sit back and be told culture to what I call a making and doing culture. The sit back and be told culture is associated with the factory type learning that I've described, and with traditional media such as television. The making and doing culture connects with the themes I've been describing concerning everyday creativity and Web 2.0, and the tools for thinking that I'll be coming on to. This isn't just about a shift towards Web 2.0, it connects other things, broader things too. There's the transition towns movement, importantly a movement for something, trying to creatively think what a better life will look like in changed circumstances as we adapt to different environmental challenges. Creative ways to get people to think before they fly. Art projects which get people involved in doing creative things in their own neighbourhoods, such as these in Walthamstow and in Stratford, London, projects celebrating people's everyday experience and creativity. My argument here is that through making things, well then you make the world your own, you invest it with meaning, and so create a positive connection with the environment. Studies of happiness show that what makes us happy is not more material goods, but having a rewarding engagement with the world. The 1970s radical philosopher Ivan Illich argued that people should be able to shape their own world, not have it set for them by others, and that people should be able to create their own things, not just have to buy stuff made for them by corporations, because that's how they give their lives meaning. And in his lovely book The Craftsman, Richard Sennett talks about the satisfaction of taking time to make things. He suggests that craftsmanship links with well-being, which itself leads to self-esteem. The things that we make may not be perfect, but their imperfections reveal our individuality and our presence. This starfish that I made for our son Finn isn't perfect, I'm not very good at sewing, but at least is made by me and contains something of me within it. So then how does this all connect with my own research? Well, I've been developing qualitative research processes where people are actively engaged in making things rather than just talking, thinking with the hands, making and sharing, and using metaphors in projects using materials such as video, drawing, collage and Lego. I've collaborated with the Lego group on Lego Serious Play, a process where people build three-dimensional representations of their work or experiences using metaphors in Lego. In my inaugural lecture, each member of the audience had a small bag of Lego and we did a couple of exercises using that, just to get people actively engaged with the theme of thinking with the hands and being able to build something which expresses something about yourself and your ideas. First, the audience were asked to build a tower which showed that they could all build something in Lego, and they all built something very different because they were all different people. Then for the next part, I asked them to build what would be for you a better world. Again, we got fascinating diverse responses with 230 people's different expressions of their idea of a better world built using metaphors in Lego. So this is what I mean about tools for thinking. We need creative ways of thinking about things to help us get out of this mess. And I believe that through the act of making, you connect with the world. That's why I think everyday creativity online and other initiatives I've talked about, like transition towns and these others, can all be helpful. So to wrap up, I'm hoping that in this shift from a sit back and be told culture to a making and doing culture, people may have a more active engagement with the world and may develop more creative solutions as we adapt from a lifestyle that ruins the environment to, ideally, one that does not. Now, you may contrive to shoot me down for all kinds of reasons. One might be technological determinism, the idea that technology will save us all. Of course it won't. In the past, people have said that the wireless or the telephone will bring about world peace, and of course they really haven't. I'm not saying that any particular technology will save us, but I do think we need to embrace anything that gets people thinking and doing more creatively. That may involve Web 2.0 or other technologies, or no particular technology at all. You could also say my approach is very individualistic, based on individual creativity, when what we need are big political solutions. Well, we do need big political solutions, but we shouldn't sit around waiting for politicians to do things for us. We need to do things for ourselves. So to conclude, that's perhaps a picture of hope for the future. And that's a picture of hope for the future. I'm finished. Thank you for listening.